Well, welcome to our social distancing book club. This is who we have right now, and maybe a few other people will join us throughout the hour. So I'm Morgan Mann, and I am the Community Relations Library Assistant for Door County Library.
And I'm Laura Qiufan, the Adult Services Librarian.
And I'm Beth Locke, and I'm the Children's Librarian, Youth Services.
And I'm Carl Eisenberg. I live in Mequon. I've actually never been in your building.
Ah, well,
Wow.
welcome.
How did you hear about it?
I participated with an event that you all were co-sponsors of about shipwrecks.
Okay, yeah.
And we
I
have
missed
Anne
that one.
joining us.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I was just saying we have Anne joining us, another patron. So did you? Hello. So Carl, did you? How did you hear about the shipwrecks? Are you a shipwreck fan?
I'm the president of the Wisconsin Marine Historical Society, and we were a co-sponsor.
Oh, great.
I worked with Tina to set it up. She did all the work. That's how I learned about it.
Oh, great. Yeah, that was a great program.
Well, I'm sitting here, Carl, in our Door County Library Lori History Room, where we have a lot of resources about things like shipwrecks. I missed that program, though. I was here working in the library that day and didn't get a chance to watch it.
Oh, it's been put up on YouTube, so.
Oh, I'll have to have a look at it.
Yep. It's on our channel, Laura.
Okay, I'll have a look for that.
It was very good. I think he went through, 15 or 20 different wrecks, and it was a very good program.
Was good. He's a good photographer and a good storyteller.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
He's our shipwreck ambassador. He's on the board of directors, and that's what he enjoys doing.
Do you know Richard Boyd? He dives at shipwrecks. He's an underwater archaeologist, retired now. He's been up here quite a bit.
No, I'm not a diver. So our organization is about a third divers. And I know some of their names. I've only met a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm mostly a sailor.
I see, yeah.
You go over top of the shipwrecks.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to come up last summer and see Windjammers at Northern Sky?
I didn't. But I was hoping to come up to Northern Sky this year to see Song of the Inland Sea, and that we had it all planned for our organization, and it collapsed. So
yeah, like everything else, sad.
Yeah, the first one ever done.
Do you have any visitors from outside of Door County coming up to Door County right now?
No, not till the end of May at least.
Maybe a few. But not in full force the way they might try in a little while. Yeah, I missed the Song of the Inland Seas too. I remember seeing the very first production when it was part of the touring university group in 1970s when I was in high school.
It's a great show.
Yeah.
We had a little bit of the music for Door County Reads last year, though, for Songs of the Inland Sea at the kickoff, I think it was, for the water books.
With Craig Konowski.
Yep.
Well, what's everyone been reading this last week?
Who's going to start? I've got 3 books to tell you about.
Oh, great. Why don't you start, Carl?
One is this one. Let's see. Can you see it?
Yes.
It's a historical fiction by Anne Rice, and it's about New Orleans and the New Orleans area before the Civil War. And it's a part of history I know nothing about, and it's about a family, an extended family, and the family extends to illegitimate children, and it's just an interesting picture of what their world was like. So that's the first one. Second one, I'm actually a science fiction person, and I'm reading a book called Waste Tide an electronic version of that book. It's in the not too far future. It's about pollution and environmental catastrophes. And it's written by a Chinese person whose name I'm sure I can't pronounce correctly. First name is Chen, and the last name is Qiufan. It's pronounced in Chinese different from what I would guess. The translator, I've read some other Chinese science fiction books. They've recently come out of that country, and the translator is very good. And the other one is a nonfiction neurology book, neurology mysteries, called Brainstorm. I don't know if you recognize Oliver Sacks as an author. Well,
I think I do, yeah.
Oliver Sacks is now deceased, and he was really, really good at these neurology mysteries. This author, Suzanne O'Sullivan, isn't quite Oliver Sacks. Mysteries are kind of interesting.
Did you have a third book, Carl, or did I miss the third?
Feast of All Saints, Waste Tide, and Brainstorm.
Okay. I'm also a science fiction fan, so I'm always looking for new ones. I finished the second in my series. Last week I talked about my first one, but the second one, this Cruel Design, it's a plague book, and so they have a plague, and then there's some gene hacking that happens and some coding that you can do to change your genetics. And the main character has some interesting things where they've actually split her brain, so she has another person inside of her brain too. And then there's so the second book, you find out who her mother is. They're still trying to defeat the virus. The first vaccine lasted about a week before it morphed, and then it morphed into the pigeon population, and it's spreading. And then of course the government's involved, and they're trying to annihilate everyone on top and get everyone down into bunkers and all kinds of good and nihilistic end of the world scenarios. And my sad part of it, book 3 is available only at 2 other libraries that aren't open right now, and I can't find it anywhere on Hoopla or Overdrive or anywhere. So I might break down and buy it from Amazon. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the last way to go.
So I have that one, and then I also read Breakfast with Buddha, which is by Ronald Merullo. And this was for a different book club I'm in, and it was very good. Where a gentleman, his family, his parents pass away, and he has to travel across the country with his sister to go settle up the estate, and he ends up carpooling with a person who is a Russian immigrant who is a follower of Buddha. And there's a lot of inspirational talk and types of things like what would you show of Americana to someone who's never been in the United States before, and lots of talks about spirituality and slowing down and paying attention to things in life. And I recommend the book. It was very good.
I read another science fiction book earlier in the spring. It was from the early 1900s, called The Machine Stops. It's a very short book, but it foretells the internet from about 1906. The author is E.M. Forster, who I had never heard of, but apparently is a
Oh, yeah. No, he wrote the Horatio Hornblower books.
Yeah, and Howard's End, which we did as a book group here for Learning and Retirement. Yeah, he's very brilliant.
It's a good story.
Well, my books, I'm going to have to repeat what I've been working on for my book groups here. And Carl probably hasn't heard it, but we're doing a couple of books that are history-based, historical fiction, and then nonfiction. Both very similar, both about very strong women who were doing intelligence-based things during World War II to defend the country. One is Elizabeth Smith Friedman, who was a code breaker. And that the book itself is called The Woman Who Smashed Codes, and it's a nonfiction, but she's such an impressive person. I'd highly recommend it, but she started out as a Shakespeare scholar and figured out how to dissect language, and that's led to this code breaking. The other book is about Hedy Lamarr, the actress, who became, she escaped from Austria originally. She married a Nazi arms dealer, which I didn't like at all when she was 19. He's much older. So she then escaped and came to the United States, and she was an actress, but she also helped develop some very elaborate systems that it's called something bouncing, wave bouncing, which is how they could send codes and disguise them. And overall, I like the first book better. I don't know why. The second book is written as fiction, and it's written by an interesting woman named Marie Benedict, who was an attorney who decided to quit that job and become an author. And she writes in the first person in a way, to me, it's a little more awkward structurally, but both of them are really interesting because they deal with really intelligent women during World War II. And I like to see that.
So the first one was the Code Breakers that you liked better?
The Woman Who Smashed Codes.
And that's for your history book discussion in the end of May.
Coming up. Yeah. I like that one a little better. Both of them are really well written, interesting subjects. So that's kind of fun, especially since this is the anniversary of women getting the right to vote. And, with Hedy Lamarr, the poor woman, all they cared about was how she looked. And so she struggled with that her whole life. And she invented this, with a fellow artist, she invented this system that was actually a basis for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all of these things. And she had a patent, and she never earned any money, and she died penniless pretty much. So it's kind of a sad story, which I don't need too much of right now. But it's still very interesting. Like historical fiction, I'd go for those, or straight history.
I like all those topics, so I'll probably read those books.
Yeah,
I'm reading right now are all about coding. It's just genetic coding.
Yeah. And by the way, Morgan, I just saw this morning, the New York Times has a very detailed article about this current COVID-19 virus and how the RNA is made up and how it mutates.
I listened to a Stanford professor talk about how it's all broken down on, there's a great podcast called Science Versus, where they break it all down scientifically. So
yeah. And this gives, this article that I was looking at just a little while ago has a lot of illustrations. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, when you think of how human beings mutated as we spread out over the world, viruses doing the same thing, only with RNA, not DNA. Interesting.
It is. I wasn't a librarian, I tell you.
Beth, what about you?
Oh, okay. So I decided that if I was going to do this, I would do something that was from Hoopla, so that anybody could get a hold of it at any point. So if you haven't already hooked up with Hoopla, you absolutely should. And I read graphic novels, and I read fantasy graphic novels if I can get my paws on it. So the three that I just finished up with, first of all, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is in reboot. So the reboot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer is absolutely fantastic. It does not go exactly the same way that the TV show did. So this is starting from the beginning again, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And Jordie bellaire is the author on these ones. And they've got the first 3 compilations are on Hoopla right now. So you can go up through, 20 issues, something like that. Another one that was absolutely fantastic is Once and Future by Kieran Gillan. And that's a retelling, kind of a horror retelling of the King Arthur myth. Oh. So it is, what you've got is a modern guy who doesn't realize that his parents were monster hunters, and that all of this stuff is tied back into all of the legends that surround the King Arthur myth. So So it's really, really cool. Lots and lots of sword fighting, really fun monsters, and undead kings. So very strange and wonderful stuff. I'm hoping, really hoping that they come up with the second volume pretty soon, because I was left absolutely chomping at the bit for the second volume once I'd finished that. And then the last one.
Oh,
and
were those, you said were on Hoopla, were they in the bonus downloads, or were those just regular downloads?
Those were just regular downloads. What I've been doing is I got my hands on a list of the best graphic novels of 2019, and I've been working my way down the list. And almost every single one of them is on Hoopla. So it's been really kind of nice to have all of that. This one, the last one I'm going to tell you about, wasn't on the list, but is absolutely gorgeous. I really enjoyed it. I cannot pronounce the Slavic name of the author, but it's Harleen is the name of the graphic novel, and it's about Harley Quinn. So she is the Joker's, in all of these things, she came in as a character as the Joker's girlfriend, and it was a joke, but this is her backstory, and it's from her perspective, and it's not funny. It's lots and lots of action, and how she got where she was by the time you see her in the Joker stuff. So from when she was a kid and all of the stuff that was going on, and her professional career until it got derailed by meeting the Joker. So it's really, really good. And it's, like I said, it's also on Hoopla, and that's Harleen, because her name is Harleen Quinlan. So.
Well, for you people who like science fiction and fantasy, I haven't watched it yet, but this weekend the National Theater production is Frankenstein, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, and it looks really fun.
I've seen that advertised. I haven't watched it yet. I don't know if I can do horror right now.
Laura, where is that going to be broadcast?
It's on YouTube.
Okay.
If you just Google National Theater, I think you'll pull it up.
Okay.
And he plays it with, I forget the other person, somebody Miller, who plays the monster.
Johnny Lee Miller.
I watched Phantom of the Opera last week.
Yeah.
And then I got sucked into another thing where they said the top 10 hardest operas to sing, and one of them was Frankenstein, was like number 5 on the list for male octaves.
Yeah, this is a stage play, but I watched the first few minutes. It was really dramatic, so I'd highly recommend it, especially for Benedict Cumberbatch fans like me. And Rob Miller, what's his name?
Johnny Lee Miller. Johnny,
he's an American actor?
No, he's a Brit.
British? Yeah, he was playing the monster, and it was really well staged.
Yeah. The place that you might see Johnny Lee Miller, that you might recognize, is that he played Sherlock Holmes on the television show that was the US TV show.
Okay.
So that's the biggest thing. That's the longest running thing he's ever been in. But no, he's lovely. Lovely.
And of course, Mary Shelley, wrote the book 100 years ago.
She wrote it really young, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Anne, what have you been reading? I know you were doing Outlander.
I'm still making my way through Outlander. But hey, I'm on page 950 of 1200, so this is good. It's still good. They're, in the American Revolution, 1777. So.
And is that the Drums of Autumn?
This is the
Echoes.
Echo of the Heart, Echo in the Bone. Echo in the Bone.
I have
Number
both
7
on top of each other, and I couldn't remember. I was in the Drums of Autumn then, because I haven't gotten to the Revolution yet.
You're right. Drums of Autumn is a little earlier in the series. This is book 7. It's still good. I'm enjoying it.
So are the later novels all set in the United States?
Outlander?
Yeah.
Starts in Scotland.
I know the
Um,
beginning. Do they move when they come to the United States for the Revolution? They stay here? Is
Yeah,
that
it
Mhm.
progresses from Scotland to Jamaica, and then to
France.
yeah, France. France is in there too.
Yep.
Maybe France is before Jamaica, I think. Yeah. So Scotland, France, then they get somehow to Jamaica. I don't remember, that was a while ago. And then they escape Jamaica up to America, and they're
North
in
Carolina region.
North Carolina. Yeah, they make a
Mhm.
home in North Carolina.
It
But
makes
actually,
me wanna go
where I
find all
am,
the stone cairns all around the United
yeah, yeah. Where I am in the book right now, they've actually gone back to Scotland to pick up his printing machine and bring it back to the US.
I followed it through the first few movies, but then I lost track.
Oh yeah,
Well,
There's so much more in the books.
there's so
They're
much more in
amazing.
the books, yeah. And again, I will say the books on CD are fabulous. At least the
Yep.
first 5 or 6 until they change readers.
I learned though that you have to pay attention if you're ordering in volume 1 or volume 2, or you get 2 of them that you can't possibly listen to in the amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they're on RB Digital, some of them.
Oh, that's
Uh-huh.
nice to know. Yeah. I can't imagine doing another boat trip over the Atlantic just for a printing machine, though. I would go make one.
Well, it wasn't just for a printing machine. There's always kind of hijinks going on with Outlander and Jamie and what his loyalties are between the British and the Americans. And he always runs into some relative wherever he is.
Isn't that the truth? How many
Or somebody
people
that he
live with
knows.
him?
It kind of feels like living in Door County, as I'm related to pretty much everybody probably.
And it is quite rainy here. I always feel like in the mornings it's like Scotland where it's rainy and drab and
Yeah, right. Like this week was.
Mhm.
I tried to talk the kids into going out for walks. I'm like, oh, it's just a slight mist, you know, we can go out. And they're like, no, yeah.
Yeah, especially not, what was it, Thursday? That was awful.
Yeah, that was miserable.
I'm glad the sun is back out again.
But it was a good book reading day.
Can I tell you all about the book that I just started?
Yes.
Go on.
It's
Oh, yeah.
the library book.
Are you going to
Bye.
do the book discussion on that for Sister Bay?
When is that going to be?
That's the book's supposed to be.
Oh,
It's like the second week in May.
It's
I'll
always the
try.
second Tuesday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sister
I'll
Bay,
give
that's
it a
my
try.
book club.
This is so many people, because of being a librarian, I've heard, oh, you've got to read the library book by Susan Orlean. So I'm finally getting around to it. Wasn't this published like 2 or 3 years ago?
2 years
Something like
ago.
that?
I think the author was at that Untitled Book Festival last year.
Ah, okay. Well, I'm enjoying it so far. I'm not very far in. It talks about, at the beginning, about the big fire that was at the Los Angeles Public Library back in 1986. So it's, which got overshadowed by Chernobyl. So anyways, it makes sense. It's a good book so far. I'm also reading for another book discussion, a book called Maid. And let me see. Oh, I have to make a plug for this again, just because I got this on Overdrive, and I actually only had to wait about a month. So that was great. Overdrive through the system. And then let me see if I can find the other one here. Also reading, whoops. Still getting used to this, folks. It's Maid.
Oh, I've heard about that one. I've seen, yeah. Is that a nonfiction or a historical fiction?
It's nonfiction. It's by Stephanie Land. And it's about a woman who is having difficult times as a young woman. And she breaks into being a maid in various locations. And exactly what happens in the, the industry with maids, not very low pay. Like it says, hard work, low pay, and a mother's will to survive is part of the tagline for it. So it's pretty interesting, and I'll be talking with a different book group about this coming up in a couple of weeks. It's hard to read stuff that is sad at this time, and there's a lot of sadness in the book. So that's why I picked up the other one too, and I was really glad when it finally came in, so I can go back and forth between them, which is, as for those of you who know what I'm always saying, is I never have time to read. I've got 2 books to read. It's amazing. But it's fun.
No time, yay.
I know.
If you're interested in genetic code type books, there's one by Greg Bear called Darwin's Radio. It's back years, but it's a good story about genetics.
Ooh, that sounds good. Is it a nonfiction?
It's science fiction.
Oh, science fiction. Yeah, I read that. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Henrietta Lacks book. That
Yes.
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
I read that one, and that was very good.
Yeah.
And then another one I just finished that I wanted to leave room for everyone to say, I'm fascinated with Teddy Roosevelt, and I had listened to one that talked about all the Roosevelts all the way through, and then I found a podcast, and then someone mentioned Edmund. Edmund was the gentleman's. I'm trying. Oh, there it is. Okay, I was trying to navigate Libby. The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt by Edmund Morris. I just finished. And that one, the Edmund Morris ones have a lot of detail in them. They read more like a history book as opposed to like you're in school as opposed to a story. So I find those kinds harder to get through. But I'm fascinated with that whole family and politics and their work with public service and their feelings towards public service and the differences between working with the maids, and it's very interesting with the class structure issues and the time frame and everything.
We did a really good one a few years ago with John Harris for the history book discussion called Mornings on Horseback by David McCullough. I'd highly recommend that one too. It's about Teddy Roosevelt growing up, basically.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to check it out.
David McCullough's always really readable, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Have any of you read American Lion?
Mm-mm.
It's it's been out for a while. It's one that I keep wanting to read because it's historical. I gotta look it up here. And I'm related to him somehow in my history. Andrew Jackson. It's about Andrew Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
American Lion, Andrew Jackson in the White House. Just have never gotten around to reading it. But it's got 3.8 stars in Goodreads, so it must be good. Out of 4.
I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
Did you say who the author is?
I didn't. Who is the author? Oops.
John Meacham.
My phone's being weird.
Yeah, we did his book recently. The last book we did was John Meacham's Soul of America for the history. I love those history book discussions. It's my favorite.
Enjoying too. I'm excited that they're actually going to be virtual for the next month because it's always at a time that I can't get to them. So I'm like, yeah.
And when we did the multicultural book group, we had a bunch of the snowbirds on, and I think they're thrilled. They're just thrilled to be able to join in the off season, their off season here. So it is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Also, it brings the whole county in and outsiders too, like from Mequon.
Way away in Mequon.
Yeah, way down south.
Yeah.
Mequon. Do you know Susan Caldwell?
No.
Oh, she lives in Mequon. But Mequon's a big place. And she has a Door County summer home.
I don't have one of those. A friend who has one of those, but I don't have one of those.
The other ones I've got on my to-read list, maybe you guys could tell me if you've read it before, is Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. I have no idea how to say that last name. And The Book of Speculation by Erica Swyler.
Yeah, I don't know.
Those are sitting on my nightstand to be read yet.
Do you guys speed read?
No.
Nope.
I speed audiobook listen.
I've done the audiobook fast read too when I have to do one for a book club that is taking longer than I thought.
Yeah.
I've heard of speed reading classes though. They intrigue me, but I've heard people say that they miss out on details when they speed read.
I had a class like that in high school, and all you got was the plot. You missed everything else. I never used the skill. There was too much detail I had to know.
I know, yeah. I like the details.
That's all there is in the Outlander books. Tons of detail, right?
Right.
That's what makes them great.
Well, it kind of gives you a window into history that makes it more interesting than just sitting in a social studies class.
I still find it interesting that even though she was a World War II nurse and experienced that life, to be able to actually not freak out that you go back 200 years, I would think that there would be more time of freak out. Like, I can't believe I'm here and where's the toothpaste? And I'm just gonna cry over here and not talk to anyone for like a month because I'm so mad that I'm stuck here.
I don't think she had time to think about it as she got thrust into it, and then she got picked up by a British soldier and had to fend for her life.
I think I would hold myself up down in that dungeon area where she started keeping all her stuff. I'd be like, bring bread to me and I'm not talking to anyone, and like lock the door.
Yeah. It must have been crazy.
And it's a requirement of, sorry, go ahead.
If you want to read something about the Black Plague, Connie Willis wrote a book called the Doomsday Book. It's not the history Doomsday Book, it's a science fiction book. But it describes the plague in more detail than we're getting about the current pandemic. So that's an interesting science fiction read. Time travel.
Ooh.
I like the time travel.
The Doomsday Book?
Doomsday by Connie Willis.
Well, if we all keep notes from this time frame, we can write our own science fiction later, hopefully.
So true.
It's really great books about this time frame.
Yeah, that's why I'm enjoying the series. The Mortal Coil is the first book in the series that I'm reading. Emily Suvada is the author, and because I find that it's a plague and it's a virus and all that kind of stuff, but there's control that we don't have right now. So feel a little happy and like you're going towards a path where right now we don't know a lot of information. So
by the gene alterations is what you mean?
Yeah.
Control. Yeah.
Well, no, so the virus in the book, it infects people, and when it starts off in the first book in the Mortal Coil, it's airborne, and if you ingest it, you will start getting black and blue marks all over you, and you start having a weird sulfur smell, and they call it in stages. So at stage 2, you'll elicit this sulfur smell that if anyone smells it nearby you, they attack you, and they go into the instinct of wrath. So it just makes people crazy, and they try to attack the person who's ill. And if you bite the person, you want to hurt the person. If you eat their flesh, you can get immunity for a while. But if I know.
Yikes.
They don't go into too much detail on that, but it doesn't sound appealing at all. But if they are too far in the process before they will explode. And when the body explodes, it completely pulverizes and goes airborne. And if you breathe that in, that's how you get the disease. And so they call them blowers. So you can kind of hear, some of they get really blotchy. And so you try to stay away from all people whatsoever. And Yeah.
Yikes.
No, it could be worse.
We read something that was like end of the world-ish a couple of years ago in our book club. I'm trying to look it up because if you want to read that kind of stuff right now in the middle of a pandemic, you certainly
I'm
could.
crazy. I know.
It's called The Age of Miracles by Karen Thompson Walker.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of plague is it?
I'm trying to remember it because it was several years ago that I read it. They awake to discover, along with the rest of the world, that the rotation of the earth has suddenly begun to slow. The days and nights grow longer and longer. Gravity is affected. The environment is thrown into disarray. And everything starts just kind of collapsing because the earth's rotation has slowed down. So it's not a virus that starts it, but something environmental either way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I ended up grabbing this one when I started putting all the pandemic books out, because you know that we'd have patrons coming in like me, liking that topic. So like, oh, that one looks good. If no one takes it, I'm gonna grab it.
Well, you had pulled all of my my kids' books that were the nonfiction pandemic books, and I had a whole bunch of different ones.
Yeah.
So
many pandemics to choose from.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. No, the one that I read out loud to the kids last summer was just called Pandemic. So it's the reason that you're here.
Was that a choose your own adventure?
No, it was just a regular nonfiction, fairly thick nonfiction one. And it was just about how, because your ancestors survived these pandemics, you are here. So, but wonderful books, wonderful.
Well, they keep talking about how there's going to be a whole new generation of kids born out of this pandemic for people who stayed home and were active in the bedroom.
Yeah, I saw what they were going to name them, something like
Coronials. Yeah.
Children of the Corona.
Yeah.
Generation C. Generation C.
Generation C, yeah.
Yeah. I saw something that said that it was someone's thoughts on moving forward and what it might be or what we might see it as when we look back at this time, and how all the kids who are living through this now become scientists and become very interested in how to solve issues like this sooner and more in depth. And so hopeful.
Biosciences. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so what's on everyone's shelf that they're reading now? I think we heard Anne's. Anyone else got some stuff going?
I told
I
you
am
my three.
right in the Bloom. Bloom. Yes, by Kevin Panetta. It's a romance, a teen romance. I'll tell you more when I finish it. But it's a graphic novel as well.
I have the Alice Network on Hoopla. I'm going to start to listen to when I walk my dog and go for my walks and do chores around the house. So I think that's a book club later in the month.
I have The Lost Man by Jane Harper next month. I'll have to start that soon. And that is on an audiobook on Hoopla. It's a thriller mystery set in Australia. So
I started watching a show on Australia where it's all the lifeguards on the Bondi Beach on Netflix.
What's it called?
Oh, I'm gonna have to look it up. But it's harrowing there. I mean, geez. I mean, every moment some people are dying and there's lots of people, and then yeah. It's not all fun at the beach, I tell you.
Well, this is a mystery set out in the middle of nowhere, and it has to do with three brothers, and one dies, and the two are enemies. And I've just read the synopsis, but it won a bunch of awards and things, so should be interesting. But that's my next one.
I've had one sitting on my bedside stand for months that I keep trying to get to. It's called Blue Mind. I had to look it up to make sure I had the title right. Blue Mind, the surprising science that shows how being near, in, on, or underwater can make you happier, healthier, and more connected and better at what you do. So,
which is why we live in Dark County.
Exactly.
And there's that there's a program on PBS right now that you can actually stream. It's called H2O, the story of a molecule or something like that, and it's 2 parts or 3 parts. It's very interesting because it shows how we're so connected with water. You might want to watch that, Tina. And I think it's Nova.
Okay.
Cool.
Are all of your libraries open now?
No.
No, none of ours are open, actually. So starting next week, though, we will be open for pickup service just at one of our branches. How are things in your area of the state?
Well, about the same. The Wisconsin Marine Historical Society's offices are in the central library of the Milwaukee Public Library, and it's just opening up for curbside stuff in the next week. So we can't meet. Our volunteers can't go in and do anything, so we're just sitting quietly waiting.
Reading, that's good.
Hey, reading, yeah.
Yeah. Are you going to have any Zoom meetings or anything like that?
The city at the time of the contested election that you all heard about, the election commission down here had a meeting on Zoom, and somebody bombed it and put in bad things. And so the city decided nothing related to the city can use Zoom. So the library here can't use Zoom. So I'm on my own computer. I can do whatever I want to, but no, we haven't had any Zoom meetings.
You might be interested that the Maritime Museum here does a regular book group, the Great Lakes book group, and they do anything related to the Great Lakes or the state. And the one they were doing, I think they just did it, was on the misunderstood mission of Jean Nicolet, I believe was the one they were doing recently. But it's actually done at the Maritime Museum with the help of Right on Door County. So you could look at the Maritime Museum website or Right on Door County to find out more.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Do they do that online, Laura?
Yeah, they were doing it online, yes.
They were?
Yeah, the last one, of course. I know because the person who was supposed to lead it was desperately trying to find a copy of the book. And she kept saying, I know there's a copy in Sturgeon Bay. But unfortunately, it was on hold for someone else. So we were trying everything under the sun. And finally, I found Google Books had a pretty good summary, or, you know, they give you a preview. So at least you could see the chapters. But they do some pretty interesting books. So it is kind of fun. It's a variety of things, anything to do with the Great Lakes. So.
This has been fun.
Oh, good. I think so too. I enjoy hearing what everyone's reading. We don't get time to talk about this stuff all the time when we're working. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it was pretty slick to get into it. I had more difficulty getting into the shipwrecks thing because I tried to do it through Facebook. That was not the right way to do it. I finally got in, but this was easy. So
good.
How did you do this one? Through the calendar, the website calendar?
Yes, the Door County Library calendar. Click there, got a message with the appropriate information to put into Zoom to get right in.
Oh, good.
That was slick.
Yeah, that's good to know. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, I would say we have another 15 minutes if you just want to chat about different things. But if anyone needs to go for any reason, I welcome you to come back. Here we're doing the Social Distancing Book Club at 2 p.m. every Friday, and we'll be posting new codes. So each meeting will have a new code. And so you'll want to visit our website for that. Or if you're on Facebook, you can find it in the events there too. So
Very good. Thank you very much. It was fun.
Yes, you're welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.